Let's bring in our panel of political strategists this afternoon, Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker. Good to see you both. Look, clearly Scott Morrison, Grahame, wants to take a tougher line, a more aggressive line with the unions. We see that today. He's appointed Kelly O'Dwyer as Industrial Relations Minister back in Cabinet and naming it Industrial Relations Minister. What does this tell you about the sort of, ground that Scott Morrison wants to fight on?
It would be the one issue that would unite the Liberal Party.
That's true.
Look, it is about time that somebody took aim at the CFMEU and probably did move to deregister them. The problem is that a lot of the big business builders are as weak as water, and every time a government goes towards that, they lose their backbone. But it would be worth doing. It would show the rest of the work for the trade union movement that there is a standard of behaviour. But we all sort of know that the CFMEU, they've sold all their citadels of thugs in the last few years, their headquarters, so they'd be well financed, and presumably they'd just set up somewhere else as the BLF or something stupid.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the BLF was deregistered and then the CFMEU. So, Bruce, it does, however, whether it's deregistered or not, if this is where the government wants to fight, does that present a difficulty for Bill Shorten? I mean, we heard Scott Morrison's line today. Bill Shorten, what did he say? Bred by the unions, fed by the unions, now he's led by the unions. Is this a vulnerability for him?
It's good. It's good. Look, didn't we have a Royal Commission into the unions recently? That was my memory, and nothing came out of it.
We did.
So, I mean, I guess you can keep re-tilling that land. I know a previous Liberal government had 2 Royal Commissions into Centenary House, the Labor Party headquarters in Canberra, and got the same result both times. So, look, they can go there, and of course they'll get some endorsement for that position because people like Setka have just set it up for public opprobrium. But I'm not sure that that's the issue that's really turning people's minds and attention at the moment. It's not something, in my thinking, that swinging voters are saying is a huge issue that has to be confronted and dealt with. In fact, you could argue that at a time like this, when we're getting an increased casualisation of the workforce, that people are turning more to unions to see what they can do to actually improve their condition. So I just don't see it happening. I can understand why they want to go there, and I can see that they'll get some good cheap points out of people like this character from the CFMEU, but will it actually be enough to swing the election? I doubt it very much. Will they get some points out of Bill Shorten's association? I think probably some.
Let me get some thoughts from you both on how Scott Morrison's going, a week and a bit into the job, and what differences we're seeing from Malcolm Turnbull. I mean, maybe that's a more aggressive approach there on the unions, and we'll see where he goes with deregistering the CFMEU. But another, Grahame, he went on Alan Jones's breakfast radio program today. Malcolm Turnbull hadn't done that for years. And even though he's not pulling out of the Paris Agreement, he clearly got a much friendlier reception.
Yeah, look, if I was minding Scott, I'd have had a list, and he's nearly ticked, the first 7 or 8, which is, the importance of the family. He loves his footy. He's got to do Indonesia. He's got to do talkback radio. The little flag thing for the ministers I thought was terrific. The bush and the drought was important. But we still have half the electorate wouldn't have a clue who the hell the Prime Minister is. So you've almost got to do it all over again and keep repeating it.
And again.
But I think it's just got a nice touch, a sort of middle Australia touch. Obviously, as Prime Minister, he's not Middle Australia, but he has a Middle Australia touch that I think, and he's a good campaigner. So when the balloon goes up,
well, we'll get to the Wentworth campaign in a minute. But Bruce, I'm not sure if you'd be as full of praise there of how he's gone. But I mean, give us an honest assessment of how you think Scott Morrison has handled. I know it's only a very short time, but how's he started?
I think it's been a bad week. The reason I say that is that he really had to go in there and demonstrate that the party was unifying behind him. And I haven't seen much evidence of that at all. We've got the Dutton forces blaming people inside the bureaucracy and possibly inside government for the problems that they've got, that he's got with the Nanny State Commission. We've got Malcolm Turnbull leaving the country, within days of losing the leadership, and his son coming out and saying...
But they're all legacy issues.
But come on, let me finish.
None of those...
But it goes to the question about division inside the Liberal Party, and that's the problem that he's got. It doesn't look to me like he's united the party at all. And you have to come in and really demonstrate that they're all pulling behind you now after all the troubles you've had, and it was worthwhile making the change that you've made. And I don't see any evidence of that. Turnbull's son calling for a vote for the Labor candidate, Julia Bishop retiring to the backbench, making it clear that she's going to stay on the backbench and not seek. Yeah. So and Julia Banks going. All these things point to a party which is still burnt very badly by what's happened in the last few weeks. So I don't see it being a happy first week. It might improve, but it's not a good first week.
Look, I agree with you, Bruce. There's clearly still, a lot of smoking ruins there in the Liberal Party. I think it's a very tough gig, though, for anyone to... Look, Scott Morrison personally is probably doing all the right things that Grahame listed there, but, very, very tough for anyone, really,
been there and done that.
To bring some unity to this show. But they've got to get their act in order for the Wentworth by-election. Let me just get some thoughts from you on this. As I reported earlier, it won't be October 6 or October 13. October 20 would therefore be the most likely and earliest date after that. Grahame, how do you see this one going?
Well, look, I don't get a vote, but I have run a lot of by-elections, and this is really unusual. Normally in Wentworth you'd say, well, look, who can be a minister, who can be Prime Minister? In this case, it's who can do well in a by-election. This is really important. And that means somebody who's interesting, somebody with a bit of flair, somebody who can handle the media, and somebody who knows the local electorate and can hit the ground running. And you think, well, Peter King, the former member, can do it, former president of the Liberal Party. Mary Lou Jarvis, she can do it. Catherine O'Regan can do it. They're quite interesting people and can hit the ground running because they're local aldermen and councillors, all that sort of stuff. I don't know the surgeon and the academic fellow, the former diplomat fellow, but everyone tells me they're very good operators.
Yeah, well, we've had him on the show. He's terrific. He lives outside the electorate, which might be a bit of an issue at the moment. But
yeah, and Andrew Bragg, it might be the wrong election for him. But when things closed today, when the nominations closed, I thought it was actually a terrific field. And they've only got, sort of 2 weeks to get themselves organised, but it's all about numbers. But a couple of those could be really, really good.
Bruce, it won't, whoever it is on the Liberal side, they'll have to contend with Karen Phelps. She will be running as an independent, and we know Labor's already selected...
Tim Mitchell.
Tim Murray.
Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Murray. I guess the question there is who's going to finish ahead of who, Tim Murray or Karen Phelps? Because, you would assume to a preference deal to pick up the preferences of the other.
Well, Labor's actually picked a pretty good candidate for a seat like Wentworth. You've got a fellow who's a businessman with an international background, done a lot of work in China, has the endorsement of the Prime Minister's son and probably the Prime Minister by proxy. So all those things suggest that Labor has actually chosen well in this case. He's the president of the local life-saving club at Tamarama. So he's a bloke who's got a profile that's growing in the electorate. Now, obviously, Wentworth is not a Labor seat, never has been, probably never will be. But if he can actually do as well as the polling is suggesting at the moment, getting him up to around 29%, and he picks up preferences, well, who knows? But I think more likely if Karen Phelps or another high-profile independent finishes ahead of him, then his preferences could push her into the seat, which of course would create a disaster for the government in terms of its numbers in the House of Representatives. Yeah. So, look, it's an interesting thing. What I do know, and, I actually live in that electorate, not at the more salubrious end, but in the electorate, and I can tell you that people are very, very unhappy because Turnbull was a very popular local member.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if Karen Phelps can peel off Liberal Party votes because of that. Then it makes it a very interesting contest indeed. Anyway, no doubt we'll talk a lot more about it in the weeks ahead. We better go. Bruce, Grahame, thanks so much. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, mate.
Thank you.